Welcome to the MetaMarine Podcast, where we talk all things from Warhammer 40k that have power armor. Keep all appendages inside the drop pod until it comes to a complete stop. It's time to rev your chainswords and beseech the Pantheon. Don't be a Tina. Hey everybody, welcome to the first episode of the MetaMarine Podcast. My name is Max Style. Also the co-hosts are Nick Fuller and Thomas Bird. This podcast is going to be new, and it's going to be interesting. We don't aim to replace any existing podcasts that you listen to. So if you have a favorite 40K hyper-competitive podcast or a casual that you listen to, we don't want to replace that. What we want to be is for that Marine player who wants to get better. Whether you're Chaos, Imperial, or somewhere in between, you want to play better. That's what we aim to do here, is interpret the landscape of 40K through the lens of a Marine player. If you've got a 3+ save base, we talk about it. We're happy to do it. So we've played Marines for a long time among the three of us. We've played against Marines among the three of us for a long time. So we kind of have a unique perspective on it. Through good times and bad times, I can definitely say Marines are an interesting faction. And over time, you'll learn to love them and hate them at the exact same time. So first, let's introduce our hosts. First is going to be Nick Fuller. So Nick, tell us how you got into 40K.
I got into 40K about 20 some odd years ago at this point. And just came over to a buddy's house and he was painting miniatures. And I was like, what is this? And he's like, well, these are Dark Angels and those are Necrons. We're going to play a game now. So that's how I got started playing Dark Angels a million years ago. Been picked up Ultramarines at one point and finally settled on White Scars as my preferred flavor Marine. And then I've been playing them ever since.
So, of course, you picked the hardest to paint faction ever.
Yes, absolutely. None of my White Scars are actually white, except for the one guy that I actually tried to paint.
You tried it once and you said, yeah, it's enough of that.
Yeah, no, one guy is good. The leader of the army, the Kasara Khan, he has white armor. Everybody else can have yellow.
Fair enough. Thomas, how about yourself?
I got started just out of college. I was reading a comic online, Penny Arcade, and they had some comic and it mentioned Warhammer and these figures. I had no idea what it was, but the comic was funny enough. It sparked my interest that I went and researched it. I found Neil at the War Store. That was an online store back in the day. And I bought some Ultramarines, and it was like, I never looked back. I love Ultramarines. That was one of my first armies. And it took years before I actually got to play a real game against real people that were interested in playing it. So I was kind of in my house by myself collecting, painting, before I finally ventured out into the wild and played. And I had a terrible experience the very first time I played the game. There was like the person was wanted to win, a little stranger at a game store, he let me walk into it. And I was like, I recognized right away that wasn't okay to play that way. And even though this is my first time, like, that wasn't a good feeling, but it didn't deter me. It was kind of like some people would just take that as like, these guys are jerks and I don't want to play this game. But it's like, I doubled down on it. I'm like, I'm going to make sure that if I ever play games, I'm going to make it fun for everyone, including myself. Right. But so I guess I've taken that mantra all the way through how I play the game and approach the game today. Is like, I want everyone to have a good time, no matter how it's happening on the table. Like that doesn't always work out. Like sometimes for whatever reason, like sometimes you just can't have fun, but, I try.
Sometimes you're trying to win really hard.
I'm the dancing and cheerleading guy, no matter if I'm winning or losing. So I hope my opponents appreciate the effort.
Fair enough. My name is Max Style, and I stumbled upon a game called Hero Quest back in the late 80s and thought that was the coolest thing ever. Went into a comic book shop and then saw Warhammer 40K 3rd edition and kind of fell in love. Played that for a while. And then college happened, and I kind of dropped it because I didn't want people to think I was a weirdo during college. And then after college, I picked it back up. So now I just kind of don't care what people think about me. Yeah, I'm a huge nerd. I enjoy it. I love it. I wake up and I think about it. I go to bed thinking about it. I think that's pretty common of everybody here.
Yeah,
if you're driving in your car, you're going, I could drop that unit of infiltrators and pick up like 38 scouts. Yeah, check it out.
It's like 12:30 at night. And you're just like, hold on, I got an idea for a list. I got to put this together.
Put it together. Like, we're talking about Marines so often. We're like, like I have a lot of people that like reach out to me I'm like Ultramarines. I'm known for Ultramarines, so they're always contacting me for Ultramarine advice or just Marine topics of the day, or they saw my list somewhere. And so I'm like, hey, we're always talking about it, right? Like, and we're always playing games. So like, why don't we just share that content with everybody else? So I think this is very topical for why we're starting this podcast. It's kind of like, hey, if we're talking about it anyways, and a lot of people want to know this stuff.
We definitely have a penchant for going down this tangent rabbit hole of before, it's an hour later and we're going, wait a minute. We're talking about buying 6 Storm Ravens. What? How did we get here? What are we doing? So that's us. We're friends. We've been playing together for a while. We play each other in tournaments constantly. Of course, it happens. We didn't get matched up at LVO, and that's unfortunate. But Thomas and I have played each other at the last round of almost every tournament before that. And
it's hilarious.
Games are always hyper technical, and then it comes down to one false mistake, and then the house of cards falls apart, and it's fantastic.
It's fun. Mac and I we have a sorted long history of those kind of tense games, and they're always like, someone's rolling around on the floor laughing, usually me, but
there are many phrases that come out of it, like, I just need a 12-inch charge, and then all of a sudden, hey, look at that, the game's broken.
He said that, and then he made it, and I'm like, what?
This is like 3 years ago. He's still huffy about a charge that I made in November of like pre-COVID days.
It was a dramatic moment. Okay, I literally rolled around on the floor. Everyone's like, "What is going on with Thomas again? Like, why? It's just started. The round just started."
It's because some 6 blade guard or 5 blade guard at the time made a 12-inch charge to kill some scouts.
I was like, it was like so. I'm like, I know we're off tangent already. Like, here we go. The setup was like, I moved these guys and I had to be on the objective. I was like, how far is this? I'm like, oh, it's just within 12. I'm like, I guess if you move max, and I guess you can have a 12. I really don't want you to charge me, but like, that's not going to happen. I'll go ahead and put him on there. And then he's like, I was like, are you going to do it? He's like, well, what's the worst happen? I fail? Like, you don't really have a lot of guys over here. I'm like, yeah, okay, sure. He's like, I'll do it. And he hits the boxcars and makes the charge. And I'm like, no, we just.
It was a good time.
I mean, you can technically make a 12-inch charge, so it's always that threat.
It was like, it was a little less than 12, but I needed a 12 on the dice to get there.
Yeah, and we like talked through the whole thing, right? So we knew it was there, and it was like, it doesn't really matter. He won't make it, but if he makes it, like, it won't be that bad. And then like he made it, I'm like, it's actually really bad.
So anyway, now that we're off subject again, so the general format, when we start the podcast, we're going to do a thing that I've done for years in business is asking people, what did you learn this week? I find it's a good question to get people thinking, and it's kind of a jerk thing to say to people to make them go, I don't want to think, man. It's like 8 a.m. What do you stop?
If you don't know Matt Kent, you will soon. He's the guy that likes to be the jerk. Is he serious? Is this guy really? Is he messing with me?
I think it's because I have a deadpan delivery to people. It's like, so did you mean to be a jerk today? So today, what did I learn? I learned that doing my taxes was an emotional roller coaster. So Intuit TurboTax, this is not a plug. They don't sponsor us. They have this like slider of your refund versus how much you owe as you go through it. So you're like, put in your income, and it's like, look at that, you're getting a ton back. And then it's like, all right, let's talk about the bad stuff. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh my God, I'm owing $10,000 million. And then they go through the deductions. Oh, we're back, but kind of not really. So, you go through this emotional swing of, I'm happy, I'm not happy. I'm happy, I'm not happy. Just constantly. And I don't recommend it, by the way, if you're wondering.
I mean, I just never pay my taxes personally. That sounds awful.
So this is also, I need to mention why Nick has 800 aliases at this point.
I'm known by many names to many people.
I told him I couldn't relate, right? Like I just pay someone else to do the taxes, so I wouldn't even know. I certainly don't like to get the tax bill. Like sometimes you're like, I got a surprise to get some money back. I owe money. I'm like, what the hell? So I guess I save the roller coaster part. And I just get straight to the end. But I certainly have the roller coaster like during games, right? That's what I'm really known for. So like it's funny to kind of like equate that into like 40K parlance. Like if
if somebody hits a 12-inch charge on you.
Well, yeah, exactly. I had a game last night, right? I played,
and Taliban gonna put it on you.
Random, Wednesday night, right? So like I'm playing, and first roll of the dice. This is like the attacker defender. Like almost doesn't matter, right? Like I roll a 6. Like whoop-de-doo. Like I wasted that 6. I need that 6 later. And then we set up, and I asked my opponent, like, do you want to go first or second? Doesn't matter. And he's like, I think I really want to go first. And I'm like, he's like, what about you? I'm like, I don't really care. Like, it doesn't matter. And I roll another 6. I'm like, I guess I'm going first, right? So my opponent's kind of sad, but like he's like, and then like I really move aggressively to move block him, and now he's feeling the pressure. He's like, I really need to go first. Oh. And so I'm like, all right, now I'm going to advance with this squad. Oh, I roll another 6. Oh, I'm going to advance with this other squad. Oh, I roll another 6. He's getting up. He's kind of getting tilted, right? So he's like actively, visibly upset. And I'm like, we're just having a friendly game on a Wednesday night at my house. Like, it's not that big a deal.
Here, come on. We're all rolling 6s, right?
So the roller coaster is like, he's like diving down, right? And I'm like, oh, man. And then I use these dice that have little dragons on the symbol. So very famous dice if you play me a lot, the dragon dice.
I think infamous is the word you're looking for.
Infamous. So some people have a PTSD. They see too many dragons, right? And I like really play up the dragons, right? So if I don't roll dragons, I don't really say something. But if a dragon pops up, even for random things, I like get excited. I cheer. I make a big moment of it. And so like people remember these dragons, and the symbol is like the psychology.
Listeners, he made a mistake, and I must correct him immediately. He said a dragon. No.
That's my whole strategy. It's my whole strategy. Is roll 6. So yeah. My opponent was visibly upset, and I know he has a history of these dragons. He hates these dragons, right? So I'm like, I'm going to take these dragons, and I'm going to go get some new dice. So I went and got a different set of dice, and these dice are predominantly, they roll a lot of 2s, right? We call them precision 2 dice. They roll a lot of 2s. They don't really, but that's just what it seems like. So like I pull these dice out, and first 2 saves I took with those dice, I swear to God, I rolled boxcars on them, and my opponent felt lost. The game was almost over at that point. I had to like bring it back in. I was like, it's okay, right? The roller coaster of it. So I'm like, I guess my thought when you mentioned that story, I thought of him, my opponent, and I was like, sometimes you can just get tilted by the dice. You're playing the game or whatever scenario, like you can't let it affect you throughout the whole game, right? You got to like compartmentalize that. You gotta just put it aside. You're like, hey,
if there's a human being that needs to talk to that, it's Nick Fuller. You had this streak of, I think, during the entire Obama administration, that was the worst dice luck I've ever seen in my life.
It was commented by multiple people, like playing at tournaments. People would just be like, what is wrong with your dice, man? I'm like, dude, I don't know. I'm gonna go buy another brick from the concession stand. Here we go. Buy another fresh dice, roll them, and just like, oh, okay, well, I guess I'm rolling bad. I'm bad at games of chance.
It's just you, right? Like you had some karma hovering around you that's chasing you down.
I have a dead dice pile in my hobby closet that is probably like 200 dice. Because at one point I just like, I'm gonna go buy some more dice. I need new dice. These dice are terrible.
You crossed paths with some luck demon somewhere in Alpharetta that got you.
I mean, I have people at the tournaments like buying me drinks. I'm like, man, I've never seen anybody roll dice that badly before in my life. I'm like, it's a skill, I guess. Not one that I want to have, but here we go.
The worst, everyone has like streaks of hot dice, right? And you're like, if you had enough dice where you roll bad, it's hard for you to like feel bad in that moment when you finally rolling good, right? Like your opponent might not appreciate it, but like in that moment, you're like, I know personally, I've rolled bad dice. So like when I roll good, I'm like, I'm going to enjoy this, right? Like it's finally happening. But nothing's worse when you're rolling really good and your opponent is rolling like crap, and it's just like those stars collide, and you're like, I can't even feel good for myself. Because like it's really bad for you, and like I can't feel too bad. Like you're trying to like jumble those emotions.
I'm trying to win the game, right? I'm glad I'm rolling good.
Are we good? Are you okay? Like let me wipe those tears off, and like I can't. Oh, I just made this 12-inch charge. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to, but it's happening.
I got a lot of that.
Take 37 saves. I'm sorry.
I got a lot of that playing Salamanders in 9th edition because the damage could just go bonkers, and you roll against, you go, take 98 damage. And they go, what? Well, every 6 is 8 damage, and I rolled 10 6s, so that's 80 damage right there. And you go, what? And then you got to go through the whole rigmarole again.
That stupid Salamander list, if you didn't know what it did, that was just always like, my favorite line with you is like, there's 2 lines, right? It's 2 CP, and I'm like, that got me every time. And then it was like, why can you do that? It's like, because Salamanders. You're like, right. And then you're like, 2 seconds later, like, why can't I reroll wounds? You're like, Salamanders. You're like, damn, that's right. Again, how many times you got to repeat that every game? You're like,
that was a good rule. That was a good rule. That was a better rule than I gave it credit for when I initially saw it. When it was, you just can't reroll wounds against them. I thought, okay, that's okay. Holy moly, that's good.
Man, I played Votan for a while when they first came out. Obviously, they were super, super broken when they first came out. But like the no reroll wounds was just like money in the bank. Like guys live so much longer without reroll.
I'm glad we got you on camera saying that, Thomas. Mister, like, nah, man, there's nothing
It
wrong
wasn't
with
that
these
bad.
guys.
It's okay.
It's
You guys are
fine. Nah.
overreacting. Finally,
play
14
around a
minutes
little
and
bit.
30 seconds.
Yeah.
Let's mark that one.
Damn it.
So let's anyway. So speaking of data slates,
Ooh.
a data slate has just happened. Finally, after weeks of everyone being emotional and being upset about it not being here.
We gotta have it. We gotta have it. It's finally here. We're like still decompressing from it because like the shock is real. A lot of changes. We are prepping for some team tournament stuff, so lists are due soon, and it's like wholesale switching of armies. Based on some of the changes or some of the updates, or just in team in general. Since you can't like play duplicate factions, people are vying for which faction is better for the moment or better for the person or all this stuff. So in general, like, wow, a lot of discuss, a lot of unpack.
I feel like it's been, and is it fair to say that this specific data slate is one of the more nuanced ones we've seen from GW?
Yeah, I think so. Like, there's a lot of stuff actually in the data slate. They did a good job in like kind of letting you know what's new. So sometimes it's like hard to like you're spending half the time just trying to like, where's the actual?
Oh, they got
or,
that. Well, they've had that for 3 months.
Did
now.
they add some special word to this one text that's maybe slightly? No, that didn't change. So even Josh Roberts, who did a lot of the updates, kind of commented on that during his MetaWatch update. So really appreciate that, Josh, if you end up hearing about this somehow. But still a lot of updates, a lot of points changes that were relevant, but like balancing stuff, but just from a rules perspective, some nuanced rules. I think we talk about some of the reserve stuff, some of the transport stuff, like the characteristic thing. Ooh, man, all the things.
So let's assume everyone has at this point listened to a million other videos and podcasts and understands what has changed in the data slate. So given that, Thomas, let's start with your list. So you play Gladius Ultramarines.
Gladius Ultramarines. Everyone says that Black Templars are the best, and certainly not Gladius in forms of detachments. It depends, I guess, what your take or your goal of it is. But I think from my perspective on all comers list, I think Gladius is the best for that purpose. My list specifically, it went up 115 points, so not too bad. Obviously, you're taking point hits. That's never good. Like Marines aren't dominating the universe, so you're like, oh, why is my list going up? But if you look at Marines in general, like Inceptors, for every person who's ever been abused by Inceptors, I'm sorry. I have 100 stories where my Inceptors were just the worst thing ever, crappy. But I understand they're a great unit, and every Marine unit has a lot of them. So those guys went up.
They create a lot of feel bads. They can create a lot of feel bads.
Well, it's just there's not really a good way to stop them from doing their thing, right? There's no counter. There's no like strategic play. I can be like, aha, I've thought this through, 3 steps, and now you can't do this thing. It's just like, nah, man, we come in within 3.
I mean, if you're Marines, you just take some infiltrators. It's like, get out of here, Inceptors. Nobody cares. But in reality, like, the Inceptors went up, Scouts went up, Aggressors went up. Like, those are the staples of a lot of Marine lists. My Gladius specifically has a lot of those units. So
little surprised Redeemers didn't get a bump. I'll be honest with you.
Yeah, I thought, quite honestly, Calgar would get a bump. Uriel, those are kind of like a lot of lists kind of take those because like just an extra CP like just automatically brings Calgar into a lot of lists. He has a lot of points, and you start putting units into him, it starts eating even more expensive. But he's a big multiplier, so. But they didn't, so I'm happy about that. Like I could tweak around, work around the other lists. Calgar does add a lot. I'm partial to him. Gilliman did go down, so you kind of like, can I squeeze Gilliman back in? You're like, but no. The problems with Gilliman weren't necessarily around his points. It's more about the free strat thing. So like they did not change that. We're hoping that they may tweak that, but no. So I haven't gone the full bore and tried to go back to Gilliman though. It's tempting. But so my list in general, like I think it's mostly the same. Like it ends up costing me 3 Inceptors if I just want to make the basic bare bone change. I my list I have 2 units of 3 plasma and 1 6-man bolter, so I could just drop 1 unit of 3, or take the bolters down to 3. And I'm 1985, so like not the end of the world. I don't know if that's the best way to change those points. I may just take a whole unit of Inceptors out and just use those points to make a different unit altogether. But I have to play around with it some. So with teams right around the corner, I'm having to test a lot of different versions of different lists, Black Templars, Ironstorm. We talk about your Flamestorm list, Firestorm, or whatever. So there's a couple different versions I'm trying to test to see if that can net me more points in the team format versus just the take all comer Gladius. But I'm partial to that list because I've been honing it for so long.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Nick, what about you? You were there were some leaks that came out about Tyranids, and you were in a hot panic.
I have been on the Tyranid kick for all of 10th so far. I'm getting ready to switch over. I'm thinking about picking up Death Guard. That's kind of like this whole data slate's got me thinking about things. But yeah, the rumors that came out were huge points increase for like all the super critical, like the Exocrine stuff that you have to have in the Tyranid army to really like keep people honest and not just like run all over you. And then the other rumor was that 0 CP or 0 OC models couldn't do actions anymore, which if you play against Tyranids or you know about them at all, the Biovores pooping out their spore mines every turn and just casually scoring max secondary points is a big deal.
It kind of props him up, but like, yeah, if they took that away, like, I don't know what Tyranids would do.
And you take away the Biovores and the Exocrines at the same time, it's like, ooh, man, that's I'm not really sure where you go with from that point.
Yeah, but they didn't do any of that, right? Yeah.
Luckily, none of that happened.
So where are you headed with that list? Where are you headed with your list currently? Now that the data slates come out.
So I only ended up losing about 25 points total from the list that I'm playing. I am leaning more towards more bodies on the table than previously. So I have a couple X-Greens in the list just because, again, you kind of have to. Got the Biovore in there. But then I think I'm going to like triple down on Von Ryans because I really like the forward deploy. Because the rules change they made was that if you have Infiltrate and a redeploy ability, then you can redeploy in no man's land as before when you had to redeploy them in your deployment zone. So that's a huge, huge buff for them. So I'm thinking about taking just like 3 units, 6 of them, just to start. Because the Tyranid one, if you know who goes first before you redeploy. So if I know I'm going first, I can be like, okay, everybody line up 9 inches away, and we're just gonna drown them in bodies turn 1.
Oh, you get to know before you redeploy?
Yeah. The Tyranid specific one is you know who's going first, and then you do your redeploy.
Oh yeah, like the scout. The Marines have that, right? So the same one for the captain. They're very few.
My typical list captain? I've been playing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Does his let you do it before?
Yeah, he was. I thought he was the only one, but I didn't realize the Tyranids had that too.
Yeah, so I've been playing the Vanguard with 3 Neurolictors, the Death Leaper, the Von Ryans, and a couple of Lictors in there. So like just pretty much the entire army can forward deploy if I want to. So now being able to redeploy in no man's land, like it gives you a little more utility and gives a little more like, all right, I could do something with that. So
yeah, for sure.
All that to say, I'm trying to pick up other armies too.
Yeah,
I'm trying to get back into power armor.
The Phobos captain explicitly says after you've determined who has the first turn, you may redeploy up to 3 Phobos or scout infantry units.
Yeah,
okay,
that was much bigger. Like when you had like sniper scouts, or I used to run with Tellion, a big block of 10, so you just pop lethal hits on that, and you kill knights and stuff. People get all mad, but the without those units, like there's not a ton of forward deploy units inside of Marines that you just really want to use. Like,
be interesting to just go all in with 3 Eradicator units or Eliminators. Sorry, Eliminator units, and put them somewhere and go. I have the first turn. Cool. I'm going to stand still and have lethal or devastating wounds now.
Yeah, I guess you just like stack them all in the corner and like bam, didn't roll any 6s. Oh, sucks.
I stood still. These are heavy. I'm hitting on 2s.
Without reroll wounds, you're like, man, sad. It's not enough shots.
All right, but other than that, mine. I play Firestorm, and I was already sort of disillusioned with Firestorm. And
he was like, I just don't believe in the Firestorm. And like he's Salamander, so if you didn't know, he's the green guy, and all the flames. So he's playing a typical like lots of flamer list. Vulcan in and out. I convinced him the Ultramarine is better just because that list wants lots of CP. So he was flirting around with adding Gilliman into the list, which was kind of sacrilege for him, but he was kind of entertaining it. He played it one time. He's like, I like having the extra CP, and I'm like, it's hard to say no to Gilliman's power, right?
Calgar.
Sorry, Calgar. So but then like you just like aggressors, right? Like they just shoot 12 inches.
The issue I have with aggressors is they don't do anything well. And it's the unit that you're sort of like, it's the instant combo that pops into your head of, oh, I'll do the dev wounds, and oh, I automatically reroll wounds. It just never, they always come up short. Whether it's in shooting, in melee, in survivability, in movement, in OC, like you're short everywhere. I feel like they're a compromise to mediocrity in all phases of the game for 200 and now 60 points for 6.
Yeah.
Is it
With a
260?
captain, you got
It's
340, 350 points in it, tied up in 7 guys.
It's like
I mean, you got to put
240, right?
the apothecary in there too.
Well, he does. So he puts the biologist with him. I do
Yeah.
the captain because he does it to get lethal and
He wants
sustained in that unit.
He wants the free. Since they're doing hits,
I want the free. I want 2 free CP.
Yeah.
Bad.
I mean,
But they jump out of the Land Raider and they never really get it done. I just always felt like, oh, here it comes. I'll roll 6d6.
It's very like threatening, and you're like,
Okay,
how? You like here, like you brace for impact when you finally like he's got me cornered, and then he shoots, and you're like, oh, I'm still alive. I'm like,
Well,
that's it. Though.
Well, the problem is also, I never got the opportunity to throw them into their preferred target because that's not what you feed them.
Yeah,
Because they're always in a Land Raider. Nobody's going to go up to a Land Raider and go, I have 10 Space Marines and I'm going to stand here. Go ahead and shoot me. That no one does that. Everyone goes, okay, here's another Land Raider, or here's 10,
Rhino.
Yeah, or 20 Necron Warriors, or something crazy, or here's 10 Plague Marines and a Rhino. What are you gonna do about it? And I go, I guess I'll get out and flame you, and then there's just a bunch of Plague Marines staring at me.
maybe if you did just like flip the roll, like they might not die.
And you're taking such a risk with them, and that is your meat and potatoes. That is the list right there.
Yeah, that's your like main killing unit, right? And you're like, if it's not reliable, like, is it the main? How does your list work, right? Like,
it's not. Sick. So it's just I don't like how unreliable, slow, unsurvivable, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
So you're going to talk about the changes we kind of came up with.
So during the tournament, I took a Land Raider Executioner, and I really liked having a second vehicle. I just played some random, for lack of a better term, crap. And it actually ended up working, and then it got me thinking some weird thoughts with Firestorm, and I ended up going down a deep rabbit hole, and I'm all the way down this rabbit hole, and if this doesn't work, I'm abandoning Firestorm with the quickness. Because this is the logical conclusion of all of these weird thoughts, and it basically hinges on a Storm Raven, a Brutalis Dreadnought, 10 Vanguard veterans with hand flamers.
That's crazy right here.
A jump captain with a hand flamer, and the Eradicator bomb, standard tricks. But there's a wrinkle that came in during the data slate in the middle of all this bizarro thinking. They clarified, or I shouldn't say clarified. They ruled that the ignoring modifiers affects the weapon damage as well.
Yeah, because your salamanders, right? You have that as one of your relics, right? Or at least the Firestorm, you have that as a relic.
Firestorm has a relic, or I should say relic, an enhancement.
Yeah.
It's 10 points that goes on any Tacticus character. That the unit ignores any modifiers made or any modifiers of any rolls made for that unit.
Okay.
So then you start thinking, okay, well, who's Tacticus? Basically, it's Little Marines. Little Primaris Marines are Tacticus. So basic apothecaries, librarians, non-phobos. So you can do things like, what units do you put it on? And the two best options you have are a Devastator unit that then would ignore modifiers. So that unit is just picking up Satan, like with the quickness. Or Hellblasters. Both are good options.
Yeah, because
I'm a sucker for some Hellblasters.
Hellblasters without minus damage is a big deal, right? Because they don't want to see something that says -1 damage on their 2 damage.
Yeah, multi-damage stuff. But also you could go, well, what about a lieutenant with Blade Guard? Oh, that's not terrible. But if you're playing Salamanders, you're going to put Adrax Agatone with them, for reroll wounds and a lieutenant. So now all of a sudden I'm back up to a 350 point melee blob. And you know,
that strength 5, you're like, man, I hope this lethal
they got
hits works out.
lethals. That's nice, right?
so if you put a lieutenant with them, they would have lethals, and they would also have reroll all wound rolls. And
Right.
you can give them +1 to wound with a strat.
Yeah.
So
I mean,
they innately reroll ones to hit, so you don't have to give them a lot of love to make them good. You just have to give them 1 CP, and all of a sudden, that's not terrible. That's not terrible. Is it the
Is
world
that
beater?
worth 400 points though.
I'm not going to throw them into a Knight Lancer and expect them to live. I'll put it that way.
Yeah.
And they're not going to kill that Lancer to death. They're just not.
Nobody got time for no Knight Lancer to stay alive, okay? All right. We all have to
But
understand
even
Knights
still,
don't-
okay, so they have to charge a Land Raider Redeemer. They're not going to
Yeah.
beat their way through that Redeemer. They're just not.
No, I just don't have the number of attacks. If you had twice the number of attacks, maybe, right?
Yeah, well, that's
They
the kind of
have 4
sustained.
each?
You know, you're like, you just don't have enough beef to go through the math. Character doesn't have enough juice.
So, anywho, it's got me thinking weird thoughts, and I'm going to try this bizarre idea and this bizarre list idea that I'm concocting. And this, you know, I realize that every one of my opponents is going to look at me like I have 3 heads when I show up with this list.
So, I mean, I like to take off the beaten path list for sure. I definitely don't take the meta marine standard bog format, but like Mac takes it to a whole nother level. Like his lists are like, this looks like crap, and then you think if this 12-step combination goes off, you watch out, buddy. And he's like reading off the you know the he's got the strings, the little red, the murder lines that you like. He's like this character, like that's how his lists all kind of come together. But like when you like step back and you see the big puzzle, you like walk into the crazy person's room, you're like, oh my gosh. Oh, it is that, you know. So he like comes
again.
to,
If you're ever playing against Mac and he says he's going to burn 2 CP, it's about to fucking blow up.
it's go time. You're like, watch out. Yeah, watch. You just gotta like at that point, like a lot of effort has gone into this. Like you just gotta like stand back in the mire with the
yeah.
glory.
Don't
And
even
when
be mad.
and sometimes when it just doesn't work, then you can laugh maniacally at him for all his wasted.
Which will be 7 out of 10 times, I assure you.
Because they don't always work. I mean, sometimes that plan is like, I don't know what you're thinking. I don't know how much time you spend on it, but like you got to go back to the drawing board, buddy.
It's but I'm going to give it a go. I'm going to give it an honest college try again. And if this still lets me down, I don't know where I'm headed with them.
Yeah, I don't know if we're going to get into the nuts and bolts of that particular version yet until he tests it. Maybe we have that as a follow-up episode, but there's some neat things he's got in there. So I'm interested to see, because I'm like, ooh, maybe I can steal some of those things, because that's some great tech.
I'm bad about coming up with these ideas, and I'm also a terrible influence on Thomas, because I'll say, all right, check it out.
Reverse. Well, I got to put some in. They're so good.
and it works both ways. He'll convince me of things that I go, maybe I do need Calgar.
I did. I worked. I was like surprised I got him on that one. He was like, no way. And then he tried him one time, and he was like, man, this is good. Calgar's great.
I mean, flat 3 melee damage. Who doesn't like that?
Yeah, with advance and charge and get the extra CP, all that good stuff. Yeah.
If he wasn't 180 points, I'd be bigger on it. But he's such an investment.
Yeah, 185. Yeah, he's pricey.
Yeah, looks sadly at the Swarm Lord for 280.
Is he really almost 300?
Yep.
But you got to put another squad with him, right? Like it's Swarm Lord's by himself. Like you could sit Calgar there by himself, but like no, you want to use his powers. So he has to have more points invested into him.
Yeah, I don't think anybody's going to be crying you a river over Calgar anytime soon.
Yeah, right.
He's not 185. He's really 300 by the time you buy.
Get out of here! Get out of here!
You put the aggressors with them, like now it's 500 points. You're like, this has turned into something that it shouldn't be.
Yeah, and if you roll dragons, you win the game. What's your freaking point?
Well, the number of times Calgar's has casually walked up in my army by himself and just wrecked shop. Like, man,
to be the plan.
You can't put him by himself.
You can't draw. He's always by himself at the end. Somebody has killed his friends, but he's by time hopefully killing other things.
Yeah, it's turn 4, turn 5, and he's just walking around the backfield. Like, is there anybody else to kill? I'm running out of guys to murder.
I'm real upset.
Any volunteers?
But that's my whole that really lends to my style, right? Like I want the heroes to do heroic things, and so like I build my armies to kind of manufacture those moments where the heroes can do fun things. So I like my models doing that. So Gilliman, Calgar, Tigris, all the named guys get to, if they get to pop off, I'm like living the dream of 40K in my little games. So I'm happy that he's getting to do that. Hasn't been good for a long, long time. So I'm glad he's finally getting his day in the sun. So it's fun to play with him.
So other Marines in this data slate, Black Templar, don't know that they took that much of a hit. I'll be honest.
I mean, yeah, like I was expecting Sword Brethren to take a hit. Like they're like pound for pound, like one of the best fighting units in the game, especially at least for Marines. And then, they took some hits on the Crusader squads, which are basically like the tactical Marines for Black Templars. They took some hits on the
two characters.
The two. Well, those guys were super cheap. Like Helbrecht and Grimaldus, like 25
What
points.
were they before?
They were 95 and they went up to 120. So both of them were the same points now. So 25 points up. So that's reasonable. Like that's good, right? Is it enough to like change most of those lists? I don't think you're not taking Helbrecht.
I don't think you're dropping them just because of 25 points.
No.
Yeah. And the scouts went up 10 points. Like everyone's taking scouts because they're so good. So like, they lost some points. I don't think they lost as many points as some of the other lists. I think Vanguard lists, that's a list that John Lennon made popular with the Centurions and all the Inceptors. Like that list took a big hit. I think it's like 175 points. So as far as Marine lists go, I think that's one of the most heavily penalized because it basically had all those units that went up were in that list, right? It's like, hey, let me take every one of these units.
Ironstorm took a bit of a hit too with the change to Whirlwinds. That really kind of hurt them.
Yeah, Whirlwinds. I mean, so like I think that's just better for the game, like indirect for the most part.
Oh, no argument.
Getting slapped, that's just like that's not super great. I think guards still are in a position where other units are so cheap that they still take all the indirect. It doesn't really change it. But everyone else, right? Like a lot of Ironstorm lists I'm looking at, the one I was testing yesterday had no Whirlwinds in it. So like it was a lot of tanks, no Whirlwind. So I'm kind of okay with that. But
all right, so Chaos.
You were talking about guys that take the hits. It's a Chaos. Like I think they are the ones who took the biggest hit. Like we knew they were top of the pops. We knew we were going to take some kind of hit. They got hit all over the place. They got hit big time on points. They got hit big time on rules. The no transports, the 18-inch no shoot.
The 18-inch no shoot. I think that one's going to be a bigger deal than you initially think it is. It sounds bad. Like you go, ooh, okay, that's a change. And you go, well, but it didn't, invalidate it. But yeah, it kind of did because all of a sudden
18 inches is a lot of inches.
Yeah, like if you're coming from reserve and you're going to shoot, trying to get within 12, like you can kind of block that if you want to, but like getting within 18, like that's a little bit harder to stop. So like the difference between a forge fiend that just pops out, shoots you, and you can't do anything about it, versus I can drive up within 18 and you can't top that strat and also stay alive. So nothing worse than exposing yourself to like finally get rid of that menacing forge fiend, only for him to say, haha, 1 CP, you can't get me.
Yeah. Other changes, bless their hearts, they got so many bad ones.
Yeah, just like look at their sheet, it's like all red.
Yeah, the mark for the transports. Yeah, the Curse of Cultists, like the
not only points, the mark change.
Yeah,
you got to go back to the drawing board on them. I think a lot of the things that people were looking at when they initially came out, all of a sudden, what's old is new again. So I think Abaddon's going to be kind of coming back. I think Legionnaires might make a comeback or make a resurgence, so to speak, in 2024 early here. Not to say that they were ever really went away, but the people weren't running 3 and 4 units of them. Are they a surrogate for Chosen? Kinda, not really, but kinda. In their own way, they've got some interesting play. I think Possessed are going to be a bit more prevalent on the field. Just being able to have dev wounds all the time is it's still crazy amount of damage. The warp talons don't seem that threatening until you start thinking, well, they got a ton of attacks. They're really cheap. They're really fast. They're going to get there, and then all of a sudden you got explosions and rerolls.
What's their change now for warp talons?
They just went up in points. They just went up in points.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But for the amount of damage that you got out of that unit, sometimes it just, they could be rowdy for no cause. So I
was expecting some kind of pact change, like it's very flavorful, but like I always felt like there wasn't any risk. You're like, oh, I take a couple wounds. I'm always going to pack. If I fail it, it doesn't matter. I rolled it afterwards. Like sometimes I forget to roll it, like this is afterthought that it just always goes off. And then you're like, oh, you're like, as the opponent, you're like, finally, whatever this pack thing you're doing is, it didn't work. What happens? You're like, I take a mortal wound. You're like,
yeah, I think I would have rather seen,
but it still works, right? It's like it doesn't work now, right? Like, no, it still goes off.
So good solution may have been like, instead of taking mortal wounds, you get battle shocked. Because that has more of an impact. You're not going to kill yourself by blowing up to mortal wounds, but you can't use strats on them, so you can't do the 18-inch no shoot. You can't do any of the fun stuff.
It's imagine if they added that on top of all this. Like,
yeah, you'd never play them again.
They hit them hard enough as it is, I guess.
I've lost to Chaos Space Marines enough times. I'm okay with it.
Just don't try to pull it. Yeah, I played a recent RTT, like the same one Mac was playing, and he was having his testing with his executioner or whatever. But I played a Chaos Space Marine player, and so this is before the data slate. So we're like, full power. We know this data slate is imminent, so this might be your last chance to play all the power. And so I was very happy to be able to win that game despite him having all the stuff. So I can tell him afterwards that it wouldn't have mattered, all these debuffs. You still can't win.
Just roll sixes and you win the game. Who knew?
I did roll a lot of sixes, as it turned out. So he was very salty about that. At least he made sure to say it to me during the game.
But I think if the goal was to create more list diversity, especially within Chaos Space Marines, I think that this data slate will accomplish that default. I mean, it has to.
Yeah. Do you think it does that for vanilla Marines? Like, do you think you're just? I mean, you by default you have to take less things because you just have less points, but you're not taking Inceptors. You're not. Maybe you're not taking aggressors.
I'm taking bizarre stuff, but I'm maybe the exception to that rule. But the data slate did make me consider things that I wasn't considering before. But did I not take scouts? Absolutely not. I still have 2 units of scouts in there. I mean, I give a dang about 20 extra points for 2 units of scouts. Who cares?
Yeah.
What's weird to me is like a 5-point decrease got me going. Yeah, all right.
Oh, I know.
All right.
We saw the green.
Now we're talking.
We see that green there. You're like, oh, heavy intercessors, 100.
Yeah.
So you're like, all of a sudden you're like, at 105, just 5 points more. There's no way in hell I could ever justify 5 heavy intercessors. All of a sudden now I'm thinking, man, 60.
That's not so bad.
4.5% off. I gotta have them.
I'm gonna take them. I take them all. Why them all? Yeah, it was
the assault intercessors and the Infernus squad to me. I saw that. I was like, all right.
Don't Infernus squad.
Get the Infernus guys. It's for the Salamander guy especially. I tried Infernus with Tigurius, and it was like the biggest wet noodle I've ever seen. I didn't even have dev wounds to make it worse. Right? I'm just shooting regular.
You want them to be so good, and then there's there are 4 embarrassments in one. They get out of the transport and they're like, all right, we're gonna get you, and you roll like 20 shots out of 10 guys, and you go, all right, that sucked. Okay, but here we go. And you get like 2 mortal wounds, and you're like, okay, that sucked.
You have reroll wounds. I'm like spending extra CP to give him an extra AP. So I'm like, oh, AP 1, a massive attack. I killed 1 chosen.
And then you go take 2 mortal wounds and like 15 saves, and they go, what AP? And you go, I don't have any. And they go, okay, well, nothing died. So that's number 3. And then you go, but I hit you. Take a battle shock. And
shock. Oh, it's
happening. Then they pass their battle shock, and that's letdown number 4. And you're like, why am
there's so many things that just pile on you. It's like you're stepping on my neck, and then you're like keep digging it in.
And then it's the next turn, and then they move, and you go, I'm gonna Overwatch with it, and just let them go.
Because it went so well on the first time, it's gonna go better the second time, I'm sure, right? Like
it's so much better without dev wounds and reroll wounds. Yeah, that's gonna make it better.
But they're 5 points cheaper now.
Oh yeah, they're 5 points cheaper.
They're worth it.
Come on,
they're worth it now.
Get out of here. If they were 50 points, I still wouldn't take them.
I know, it's be hard pressed. You're like, well, maybe I just have random bodies. They're the first to die, just something up there. But
okay, so thought experiment. If they were 65, they were the same. If I could take 5 of those or 5 scouts, still taking scouts.
I mean, scouts do so much more. The forward deploy, the bounce around, that's worth 10 times more than some random flamer that doesn't do anything.
I'm still taking scouts.
I mean,
Unless maybe you're playing Tyranids, like Nick would probably not want to see a million flamers across the board.
To my brain, I see guys with like a whole unit of dudes with flamers. I'm going, oh man, that's bad news. It's gonna pick me up. I don't like that.
Sure. And
like nothing in my army has the equivalent of like, I mean, I have like Pyro Horse, whatever. We don't count this. But like,
we don't talk
10
about that.
guys with flamers, 10 d6. Yeah, I look at that and go, well, that's a problem for me. But like, from the other's perspective, you're like, man, this does nothing.
And against
especially compared to, tough 3 guys with 1 wound is bad news.
I get it, but then 2 Terminators could stand against that and go, get out, go away. You're never getting rid of me.
Yeah, they go and touch them and go, all right. So now what are we gonna do?
Yeah, what are we doing here? So, I think Chaos Space Marines, they're not in a great spot. Do I think there's still meat on that bone? Maybe, but it's getting pretty gristly.
I don't know. I think there's enough there. It's not nearly as good, but like I definitely think there's some play there.
I think it's going to be bizarre. I think what is going to work.
Question. Go ahead.
I said I think what's going to work is going to be some bizarre, 3 units of 5 possessed, like something odd is what it's going to come out to be, and it's going to work 80% as well as the current chosen spam does, but it'll work.
Yeah. All right, so let me ask you this question: who got it worse, Chaos Space Marines or World Eaters?
World Eaters has a lot shallower pool to reach into.
Yeah,
to come up with a plan B, because they're going, what else we got?
And if you're a World Eaters player, I'm apologize right now, because like when we first all saw it, everyone was like, World Eaters are dead, right? And like my first gut reaction was like, that's rough. But like, is it that bad? You're like, how many points is it? They don't have that many units. Like that hurts. Oh, you don't get to bring Angron back. But like, so it depends on who you talk to. Like for the most part, I think most of the World Eaters are pretty upset, because that's like their whole game plan. It's like, how can I maximize Angron coming back like 15 times in a 5-turn game? But it's also like World Eaters are still good. So like, I feel like, you kind of like, there's 1 or 2 builds of World Eaters. You just kind of like, those are the lists that you take, and maybe this is an opportunity to change it around, kind of like Chaos Space Marines, right? Like there's other ways to play. Like just now it's time to spend some time exploring. You kind of think about AdMech, right? You're like, they didn't get anything.
I'd say
crappy. Is it because they're crappy, or is it because we haven't had enough time to spend looking at it?
I think it's that. Honestly, it's because nothing has emerged from that book as the like, if you take 6,000 chickens, you can peck them to death in a heartbeat, and there's nothing they can do about it. Like,
if you get $6,000 to buy all those chickens, and if they're in stock somewhere, like maybe. I think it's kind of like Sisters, though, right? To your point, right? Like Sisters didn't get any changes, and they were like regarded as one of the crappiest factions forever. And then all of a sudden they win a tournament, and everyone's looking at these Sisters like, what? And like someone had cracked the code on some of the things in there, and they had these combos, and like, hey, Sisters turned out like really good. Like you can do some cool things, and maybe there were some closet Sisters that were like, yeah, I knew it all along, but like they weren't really out there winning tournaments.
Yeah, there's one guy in the middle of Wyoming who's playing against his cousin who's cracked the code on, Sisters or AdMech. There's one guy who plays AdMech who has blank bases, and he's got like, check it out, I got the AdMech list. And it's 60 Rangers and 60 Vanguard and 12. And nobody get out of here. Nobody's doing that.
I mean, if you're a hardcore AdMech guy, like power to you, man. Like tell us what it is. So we can have some. There's some guys that play AdMech here. They're super sad about it. So like. Maybe we can make that happen. But yeah, you always kind of look at the factions who didn't get anything. Is that a statement from GW that these guys are fine? Like they're no problem. Like Thousand Suns, right? Didn't get anything. Like if you're a Thousand Sun player, like I'm sure you're like Thousand Suns have had it hard. They got some really hard points nerfs last time, but now maybe the top guys have gotten hit, and now the predators for Thousand Suns have gone away a little bit, and maybe they got some juice back.
Well, yeah,
as always, right? It can't be that easy.
So I think. The biggest change. The biggest change is sort of not directly evident, and you have to read into it. You can't just take your lone ops from Tzeentch Demons anymore. So the Changeling is gone, which was your easiest, and the Blue Scribes, which were your easiest to. I need to get secondaries. Holy crap! I need secondaries, and that was really the options you had. Yeah. Now you've sort of. Now it's I need pink horrors, and now I'm paying, or a blue horse, and I'm paying a 110 point tax to get that. And that's 90 points for a changeling. I'm 200 points into that. T-Suns do not have 200 points sitting around. They barely have 2 points to spare. Everything they have is so dang expensive. And you're tying up 1,300 to 1,600 points of your list is just in stuff you have to take to make the mechanics of the list work, much less score secondaries.
Right.
So, is it a nerf? Unquestionably. Are they in
by proxy
more target-rich environment? Arguably, yeah. The biggest predators are kind of gone. Are you worried about getting overrun by world eaters anymore? No, you're not. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm happier about that.
Still think they got to play.
It's still tricky, right? Because like you don't have screens in Thousand Suns, like especially if you don't have the cheap demons. Like you could do zangers, but like again, you're spending points on stuff that you'd rather be spending on stuff that actually does work in the army, not just stands around.
Sure. Your screens are rhinos at the end of the day.
Yeah.
With Eldar maybe being nerfed a little bit too. Okay. Now maybe they got a little bit better play. I mean, Doombolt matters more against things that aren't in transports and that don't want Doombolts. Which is, water's wet and the sky is blue.
Tell me something new. Yeah.
This is the deep corner with Mac and T-Suns, by the way. Damage is good.
Yeah, every time I play
T-Suns, you're going to score more points than your opponent.
You're going to win the game.
Every time I play T-Suns, I'm just like, I played T-Suns before. I know these things, but like, I'm not quite sure if you're playing it right. It's always like this like magic curtain that they just do whatever they want. Just tell me when it's done. Did I die yet? And then you're like, I guess that's right. And then later on, you're like, oh, they didn't quite play that rule right. You're like, so every time I play Thousand Sun players, even when I play Mac, I'm like, I have to ask them a million questions. So I was like, is that how that works? I'm like,
I have shown data cards to my opponents in the middle of games. Every game.
They're playing Thousand Suns, right?
Every game.
Where you're like, you're not playing your own army right. Let me tell you why. And they're like, no, it works that way.
I'm going to do 3 rituals. No, you're not. You can't do that. Why not? Read the dang sentence. But I think, realistically, I think there might be play there. I'd like to try it out again, but that's just mileage, and that's just being in a new environment.
Yeah.
Fundamentally, do you change your list? No. Maybe you start trying to take that Winged Demon Prince because he does the same thing that a Caladius Assassin does. At the end of your opponent, you can pick him up and put him down.
Oh, he jumps up.
Yeah, which then
that's very useful tech.
That's a cool new model, though.
It is. With them, it lets you do. I deep strike it somewhere, and then I can move it in the shooting phase. After it deep strikes, it flies, it moves, and then I can use it for line of sight. So
doesn't it do mortals when you fly over people too?
It does. After it finishes a normal move, so that would count. It's move again in the shooting phase. Pick a unit that moves over and roll 96 for every 6. I think it's a mortal wound.
Okay.
It's not nothing.
Yeah.
His claws are psychic.
You're not counting on that to win games, but if there's like a guy left on an objective, you're like,
his claws are psychic, which is kind of the weirdest thing about him is all of a sudden you can boost that if you want to give him the Arcane Vortex, and now he's got flat 4 melee, which nobody wants that. Nobody wants that. And then if he's around Magnus, you can give, and for 1 CP, you can give him reroll hits and wounds. So he can kind of turn up when you want him to, but then again, he could just die randomly. The other change that they made was the Exalted Sork on disc. Still has the ability. He points at somebody in the shooting phase, you roll a d6, and on a 2-up, you subtract 2 from their movement. I guess technically you could have interpreted it that could have stacked previously, even though I don't know any TO in the world that would have let you play it that way. But now it applies a status effect that's called...
it has a name.
Yeah, it's let me look it up. It's called like...
Suppressed or something?
Yeah.
That's the suppressed one? They said that a lot.
No, you're bound.
They bind you. So that one does not stack, right? Just to be clear.
Correct. It does not stack now. Now, officially, it does not stack now.
Yeah, right. They said that if it causes a status effect that has a name, like being bound or like barb gaunts have suppressed.
Yeah.
Like if it causes a status effect that has a name, then it doesn't stack.
And yeah, the winged demon princes, you roll 9 dice, and for every 6 you do immortal. So there's a world you live in that you could move over somebody, shooting phase, move over them again, do the ritual again, move over them again, and throw 27 dice at somebody. If you're Thomas, you'll do 28 mortal wounds on 27 dice.
Yeah, more dice, more. Yeah, extra 6. They explode. Don't you know? 1,000 Suns. I just add extra.
It's in there. It's a special rule. You don't worry about it. Don't look it up. Don't worry.
So it's maybe, and I'm for sure going to do some playing with it, and see, because I really enjoy playing that army. But that army, at the end of playing a GT, I always feel like
That's exhausting, right? You gotta like spend a lot of effort, like drawing up the game plan of the 12 steps for every little move you want to make.
Yeah, it gets old. And having to explain to your opponent and go, I'm not cheating. Honest to God, this is what it can do.
Yeah, Mac.
I still say you just have like record a video on your phone of you going through like here, just watch this.
Watch this while I finish my movement phase, so that when it comes, you're ready. And like
it's like a bad training video at work. Hi, my name's
turn
Matt.
2. Hold on, start the video again.
We're gonna play a game of 40K today. I play 1,000 Suns. Do you know what that means?
Before?
You will now be handed a pamphlet, and you no affect, like hand them a bound book, like, here, you're going to need to read this.
Turn to page 3. Let's talk about cabals.
Yeah, 15 minutes later, you still haven't gotten through the shooting phase crap that you can do. It's an interesting army, though. Every time I play it, I enjoy it. About 2 weeks after the tournaments happen, I go, I really did enjoy it, but man, I get tired playing it.
Yeah, the game 4, game 5, you're just like, I'm tired, man. I'm so tired. My brain.
You're a little old, right? Like you don't recover round to round over the long call. Like that's a lot of stress on the brain.
Which I guess the argument can be made that that's bad game design. So you shouldn't have to do this like 14-step rubric to put this together to go. Yeah, no pun intended.
Yeah,
this 14-step Rube Goldberg thing to go. And now I take the objective. Whereas like Marines could just go
3 points.
Marines go, I deep strike 3 Inceptors and take the point from you. And you go, son of a bitch.
That was easy, the button.
Yeah. What's the issue? You could have just done that. But speaking of, you could have just done that. So are there any other Xenos factions that we need to be aware of? Yes, Dark Eldar. There's going to be a lot of Dark Eldar.
Yeah, I haven't really looked into them that much, but yeah, I've heard the whispers in the warp.
I got some people who are like diehard Dark Eldar fans. I have a huge Dark Eldar collection, so I used to play Dark Eldar, so I really like Dark Eldar. I've been abused by Dark Eldar a lot, especially in, what was that, 8th or 9th edition when they're like freaking all over the place.
Yeah.
They got hit so hard. Yeah, it was 9th, right? Like they ran the train on everybody, and then like basically they had slapped them down so hard they were at the bottom of the barrel for so long. So
it was a long.
You're like, time. I almost feel bad for you, but I remember I was bad touched by those guys for a long time. They got to run amok untouched for a while. I get Votan for 2 seconds, not even released, and then I finally get to feel the power and then get away from.
You're not gonna find any sympathy from anyone here.
So I couldn't commiserate with them. But now. They've lived through that hell, and they're back. They're back, baby. They're back with a vengeance. If you haven't looked at it, if you don't know anything about Dark Eldar, one of the big things that they took away was Dark Eldar predominantly in that 9th edition phase was like they were heavy melee. Like they had some shooting. They had great vehicles, all the invulnerable saves, but they were like hardcore melee. They could just I could launch a charge from practically anywhere on the board. I can just chop up whatever I want. Like the little characters, the succubus, Drazar, all the incubi. Ooh, it was gross. And then fast forward to hey, we don't like Dark Eldar anymore. Now they became a shooting only faction. They got chaff with that just die like chumps. They basically took away all the invulnerable saves from their vehicles, or maybe they have a 6-up. I don't even think they have that. So it just went from the opposite. Their identity was gone, right? And so even from a player perspective, like Incubi Archons can't join Incubi. That doesn't make no sense. Incubi are crappy in combat. Doesn't make any sense. Everyone's toughness 3, that's bad. That's just Dark Eldars, but they had nothing to kind of make up for it. But now they've given them this whole new detachment, because you're we know they're bad, but how can you fix them, right? You just can't make them infinitely cheaper. At some point, it just breaks the game, right? How can you fix them? So they give them a new detachment. You're like, wow. +1 to wound fixes a lot of the problems. Extra EP, moving out of transport's insulting. So they don't have advance in the charge. So like giving them the extra movement to charge, making vehicles more worthwhile to take, making it where it's not all shooting. Making witches actually decent, like put what's her face in there, Lilith. Oh man, like there's some cool stuff in there. Like you get to actually play a game. There's different builds, Talos and Chronos. Like, oh, the Dark Eldar guys are super stoked. And I'm like, we're gonna get the crash course. If you haven't seen them, you're gonna see them because like there's gonna be Dark Eldar.
Yeah, it's coming.
Yeah.
Tau did not get touched that badly. And be prepared to see at least 2 Riptides on every player because now Tau players have the it's on sale mentality of at 180
5 points cheaper.
At 180
go down
points,
like 5 points, like our guys.
They went down 15. So it's like 15. At 180 points, Riptides were hot dookie. At 165,
price
oh my god,
move,
they're
baby.
the best thing ever.
That's so crazy. I mean, yeah, good for Tau, right? You kind of got to like a couple builds where they're just basically all the same, right? You're like, I got these big blobs of the crisis suits, and that's all there is. Obviously, we saw the reveals for like the Kroot stuff, and who knows how long we have to wait before they get a new book.
It'll be pretty quick, I think. They've already shown.
I feel like they're right. It's right around the corner, right? So like,
I would anticipate before Easter that book's probably out.
So, that'd be pretty sweet. There's a lot of Tau hate, like I feel bad for Tau players. I'm like, we often have bad games against Tau, but like they're in a hard place. Like their army's like so one dimensional. Like it just shoots. Like it kind of gets repetitive. Like you have these units, you feel like you don't have a love, and now they changed all of you're like, I'm the shooting army, but I only hit on 4s. It's like you have to do all these mechanics just to get an extra. It's just give them something, right? Like just give them a little bit, right? Like, they're not asking for tons of stuff, so. I'm all for making that faction reasonable because like it's so far up and down, right? Like it's either like super over the top shooting and it's just oppressive and it's not fun, or it's just like all the way at the bottom where you're like, man, it's kind of crappy. Like, what are you supposed to do with that? So,
or you end up in bizarre lists like I have 60 breachers.
Yeah.
Okay, you found the one thing that's undercosted in the codex. You did it.
Yeah. Like that's not fun.
Like, the breaching.
Like that's not fun list design, right? Like I'm just going to overwhelm you with like the point per wound.
Take my efficiency. Ha! Like, yeah, sure did, buddy.
Mm-hmm. And I'm not. I used to have a Tau army. I loved Tau in the early days when they first came out, and then I slowly came to the dark side of like Tower Devil, and I don't like Tau. But
I started on the side of Tower of the Devil, and I just remained there.
There's a lot of Tau hate floating around. It's kind of like the Eldar hate, like. Eldar are somehow always good, and so there's always going to be some Eldar hate. I played Eldar for a while. I had some cool conversion I saw online, and it was a bike conversion, and so like I wanted to take this bike army, not because bikes necessarily good, they were good, but because I had this conversion I wanted to do. So like I had to justify every game before I played. I'm like another Eldar player. You're the devil. I'm like, oh, but look at this cool conversion. Like, I'm not that guy. This guy. And then I play the actual game, and it's Eldar doing Eldar things, and they're like, I hate you all over again. Like,
I knew you were one of those guys.
So that was like hard on my personality, right? Because I want the person to have fun. I'm trying to have a good time. I want to have my models painted really cool, and then it's hard to justify that sometimes when your opponent is literally just like miserable on the other side because whatever's happening in the game, all the rules or whatever. So. I eventually had to stop playing that army because it was like, it's like you're playing Salamanders. Like every game, you're like, okay, you're going to spend the first 30 minutes of this building you up so you're not so let down at the end of the game. Eldar do what they do.
And you're going to catch an elbow from the top rope. It's going to happen. I'm going to let you know it's happening now.
I'll let you know a couple times beforehand. Okay, it's coming. Brace yourself.
So it's
not that bad, but like, it's pretty bad. Okay, I'll pick you back up. Let's get you a drink.
And I'll be honest with you, it was never the people who had no idea. It was the people who I'd go, so have you ever played Salamanders? Oh, yeah, I got a friend that plays them. And we're talking some of the top people that play the game. I mean, some people that are top 10 in the world. I played against one at Warzone Atlanta, and I was like, he's like, oh, yeah, I got a friend that plays Salamanders all the time. And I caught him off guard with, can't shoot that unit. Wait, what? You charge them. Well, I'm going to charge you back. Wait, what? Like, it was always the people who felt like, oh, I know the rules upwards and backwards. And then you catch them with something they don't expect, and then it's, let me see the rule. Okay, here.
Yeah.
Then you get into those protracted
that's always
battle.
It's always tough when you catch someone in that moment because you don't want to have a gotcha moment, but you also don't want to just like, here, let me unravel my plan where I'm going to like defeat you.
Yeah. Let me tell you exactly how to win against me.
It's this fine line of like how much information is the right information, and at what point do you need to give warning of things you're going to do. You want to be a good sportsman, but you're also like, I can't just like talk you into a win, by revealing
don't do
plan,
that.
right?
Do this instead. That's how you beat me. Like nobody.
Yeah.
You kill this guy over here. It's
You
going
don't
to
have
be
to
real
just
bad
move right
for
here a
me.
little bit. You can avoid all of this. You're like, man. Sometimes that's the right thing to say. Sometimes like, oh, that really hurts. So it's a moral dilemma sometimes. But you're trying to play the game. You're trying to win. So you just like
never
people
more
have
dilemma.
rules, right?
Nope. You always give them the turn 2 backbreaker. You go for it. You suck them into the trap.
Put him in the double Nelson.
It's just the trap army. Like it literally is. I can't like show you where what are the bungee the sticks the
punji sticks.
Yeah.
the punji sticks. Yeah, I can't show you where the punji sticks are. Like defeats the whole purpose.
Nope. Give them the judo throw and put them in the dirt. That's what you got to do. So speaking of judo throws, Necrons. Turns out they were already playing with the data slate. They just didn't know it yet.
They're perfectly balanced.
I mean, they just got a new book. I mean, like I think that's pretty standard for them. Like they usually don't just like judo chop the book right out of the gate. I mean, you kind of saw that with Admech. Like that was a surprise because like they came out at the same time, roughly as the Necrons.
Votan got preemptively judo chopped after the book got leaked online.
They messed that one up real bad though.
Like, I mean, was it that bad?
We were
Get out of here.
You 15-minute mark, I believe.
Yeah, 14:30.
It's a little broken. Okay, it was a little broken, but they didn't even like release the book. It was before the actual book came out. They were like,
it's because the stuff that they showed people. We all sat down and went, "I'm sorry, what?"
I mean, we played a bunch of pre-games. I was like, "This is great."
Yeah, I bet you.
They like nerfed it 2 or 3 more times after that. Like they kept piling on. Like I'm like, it's certainly not too bad now. Oh, I got hit again. Oh, I have 5 minutes now. Poor Votan. I haven't had the interest in playing it in 10th. I have them. They were bad for a while, and they got the new update, the last data slate. They're actually pretty good now. And I'm like, I don't know.
I got some new models coming out soon too, right? The jump back guys. They was in the kill team.
They
box,
showed one of them. I don't think they've officially shown like a unit of those guys.
I mean, it'd be nice to get another unit. They don't have that many units.
Yeah, so. He's got a name. I think it's Jerk. I think that's what they called him officially.
Yeah.
All the dwarf haters. I don't understand the squat hate.
Yes, you do. You understand exactly why we hate you.
I did punish a lot of people with that Votan list. That was a
punish.
The 2 land fortresses going. All right.
So there's this famous sentence that he said to everybody. No. It's easy to not get grudge tokens. You just don't have to stand on objectives.
You just don't get on the objectives.
Don't stand on objectives. Don't stand where I can see you. Don't do actions. Don't kill me. And don't be killed.
Fine. It's fine.
If you just stay over there
don't be on
behind
the
that wall.
What's the big deal?
Yeah. There was a whole process to get judge tokens officially. But
process my foot. The process was you went, it's my turn, and he gets a judge token. That was the process.
It's a haters. Bunch of haters.
Yeah.
I don't know.
To this day, I still hate that.
We had some good draw about 10 games versus the Salmon. Was that your Salmon?
Right? Yeah.
Whew, that was good.
Whew, how about turn the table on you on that one, boy?
He was pretty upset.
God almighty. I'm over here playing at like level 11 out of 10. All right, I'm going to trap him in. I got him. He fell for it. I had like 5 traps that all had to happen. And I'm on like...
He did it all. And I was like, kept walking into it all like blindly. I'm like, oh man, it's a good move. He's like outplaying me at every step. And then I'm like, I just make a couple extra saves right here. All this guy just happens to be in the right spot to move block your entire army. You can't get fit through here. I'm like, oh, that's convenient. I'm like, my Max is shaking his head like there's nothing I could do.
I was on step K of a 38-step plan. And on, it just, no, I think I'm going to stay and I'm just going to kill everything. Like, okay, cool.
Guess I'll shoot. I need 11-inch charge with these berserks. I guess I'll go for it. Oh, I made it. Look. Oh, wait.
Oh, yeah, 3 grudge tokens. That means I wound you on -1s. Oh, look at that. Everybody's dead. I don't want to talk about it. So, Death Guard.
So, I play a lot of games against Death Guard. I think Death Guard really strong. Like, if you don't know about Death Guard, there's a couple different builds. Obviously, Plague Burst Crawlers, all indirect, took some hits. I think if you're playing Plague Burst Crawlers for the indirect, you probably weren't doing it right. I think their biggest push is like they had 2+ saves, right? And they were kind of cheap. Now they're not so cheap. So like that kind of hurts if you're a Death Guard guy. But Mortarion, if you're a big fan of Mortarion, that whole argument about the characteristics and his bubble thing, like not working on half the stuff, now they changed it. They clarified what it works on. So he's back to being good. Right? Is he good enough to be in the list? I've seen a lot of lists that like, I don't need Mortarion. I take a lot of Plague Marines. Plague Marines went up, so like maybe that's a little bit changed. But Death Guard with that extra layer of not just minus toughness, but either -1 ballistic skill or -1 to your save can be very problematic. Like if you're like orcs or somebody who has crappy saves and now you just can't hit anything,
Oof.
tough.
Oof.
If you have bad ballistic skill, weapon skill, tough.
The save is rough against me. And also they have the Putrefires in all the army that give them fight first. So
yeah, if you're really heavy melee, it can be really So they got a good thing. They got a lot of good things. I mean, like if you can, bust them out of the rides and get in there, they kind of can fold if you have the right tools. But pretty good army. So I think Death Guard are in pretty good shape. Like obviously you got to shift it a little bit, but like you have some choices there.
So,
yeah, I've got some dudes I've started. I got a paint scheme picked out and some models to start. So they were going to be my 10th edition army, and then I got stuck on NIDS again. But I'm slowly like creeping back into building them up.
Yeah, I mean 10th obviously like marquee like the Marines and the NIDS. You like all these cool new NID models. You can't not if you're like a fan of bugs, like jump on the new hotness. But calling you back to the power armor guys and Nurgle. Like if you're into that aesthetic, they have a lot of great models. Like those Plague Marines. There's a lot of cool models there. So.
I didn't like him at first. When the new molds came out, I was kind of like, man, I don't know. That's too many tentacles, too many mouths, too many like things sticking up. Like,
that's the Tyranid guy, right? Like he says it.
Yeah. I don't know, man. There's too many tentacles. They're in the wrong spot. You know?
I don't know.
Right
like
tentacle.
But like the more I actually like look at them and like actually painted a couple of them, I was like, these are some cool models, man.
They're super
like,
cool.
Really
like you see
cool
a nicely
models.
painted Death Guard, you're like, I appreciate the effort that went into every one of these little pustules. You're like, there's a lot of stuff. There's a lot of detail on this one guy. You're like, there's a lot of these guys too.
You like them until you paint the fly guy from Blight Lords.
Oh yeah,
fly guys. Oh, can't get down on fly guy.
But he'll get down on.
He will, and he won't get off. So, is Mortarion good enough plaguing?
I think if you build around him, I think he's still good.
Yeah.
I think, it's kind of one of those deals, right? When you're like, if you're just like playing to the meta, like you got to look at your opponent's armies or what the armies of the day are. Can they instantly kill Mortarion? Does that characteristic thing give you some big leg up against your opponents? Do some people have like minus damage? Is that a lot of things that are around? But like he's pretty durable with all the Death Guard rules.
I have to
like,
say,
pop all the things.
I am a little jealous of just having a pocket answer to a Satan, because he can just pop the aura and go, "Oh, I'll just charge him to heck with it," and just pick him up.
He just charged him with all his friends, and they all get it too, right? Like because it's like you talk about lethal damage with all those 2 damage hits. You're like half damage. You're like, not for me. Just like hit him.
It's.
Does he have deep strike? I don't think he does. Yeah.
I don't know. I'll be honest with you. He's got wings big enough. He could.
You would think so.
I thought all wings guys have it.
Magnus does. Yeah, Magnus has deep strike.
Yeah.
And you can make.
I was thinking like
12
one
inches,
way to
right?
keep him alive if you rapid ingress him.
And so does Angron has deep strike too.
I mean, you just hide behind a wall. Like you can't casually get to him. Like he's big, but like he's not that big. So he's not like towering or anything. You're like,
well, maybe it's a credit to the Death Guard design that you don't have to take Mortarion to make the army work.
Yeah.
For both World Eaters and T-Suns, I feel like you have to take their Primarch.
You have to take Angron. You have to take Magnus. You can't take T-Suns without Magnus. I think I've seen some non-Magnus.
Sure. You're missing out on a lot.
Yeah. Yeah.
+1 to hit and wound.
He brings a lot to the table.
You're missing out on the only big melee threat you have. You're missing out on a really good couple of guns. The toughest thing in your army. Like, the biggest threat projection you have is double moving Magnus and putting him in a position where your opponent goes, there's Magnus over here.
Oh, yeah, no, Mortarion does not have deep strike, apparently.
Hmm.
I would not have guessed
Well,
that.
what I learned today is Mortarion does not have deep strike.
Never knew.
There you go.
Not in three of us. I do like the fact that like if you're just like I'm picking him up because I really want to put him in the list because I mean you're playing Death Guard, right? Like you have the option to take a Primarch. But like I like the fact that you can put him in the list and still be like competitive, right? You're not just like doing it for fluff. So I'm gonna pick him up just because I'm looking forward to actually painting that model. Like
For the next 3
So-
months.
yeah, it's gonna take a minute. All right.
Yeah, that's fair. I think Death Guard though, like in generally speaking, they take some hits, just like Marines. I think they're in a good spot though.
So we have some lists that we are going to try out. And typically, what we're going to try to do in these episodes is we're going to have a project that is going to be the last thing we talk about is a project list or something we're going to work on to try to refine. You know, maybe you're a Raven Guard player and you want to try to come up with a list to make Raven Guard work because you really love them. We'd like to work on when we're going to pick up projects like that and we're going to refine it and keep going as we go forward. I think our first installment is going to be, can I get this Firestorm list to be anything but hot garbage? And right now it's like lukewarm garbage. It's not even hot garbage.
I think there's some I think there's some play there. So like what we'll do is we'll workshop the list, we'll get it on the table, make some tweaks, maybe we'll do a video battle report on my channel, and then we'll just come back and report. At least nothing else. If there's a tournament, maybe we take it to a little RTT or a GT. Once we get to a certain level and play it, and you kind of get some results. So like we'll talk about what it is in more detail maybe next episode, and then we'll dive into some of our play testing that we've had, and then maybe some tweaks, and then we'll eventually have a video of the game, and we'll talk about the results, and you kind of follow that journey along with us as we kind of like see if this experiment is a success. And sometimes it isn't, but you had fun along the way. Sometimes it's like maybe this whole thing wasn't a good thing, but maybe I pick a little gem out of that whole effort, which helps my other lists. So there's always something that good comes out of it, and it's that whole process where we kind of like show you the making of the sausage, so to speak, of how we get to some of these wacky lists that we come up with.
Wacky list is maybe if I could pick a name for this army.
I would like looking at his list. I'm like, this is not a list that you would typically see and just understand all the nuance that it can do. And that's kind of one of the things, right? I don't want to have a gotcha versus my opponent, but I also don't want to run the standard quote unquote net list, right? Where everyone knows what it does, and
they look at you and go, yeah. No, I know.
I have to counter for it. I understand how it plays. Where you're like, hey, this list looks like nonsense, or maybe I don't know what it does, so that I have some opportunities in the game to like pull some cool maneuvers that you may not have anticipated. Right?
It was so nice to go to ATC with that list and go, and they threw me out first every turn, and every turn, without fail, everybody went, oh yeah, I want to play him. That's garbage. I can smack that.
Oh yeah.
So
he was playing salamanders.
It created
so
these
orcs and
mismatches
knights.
like crazy in a team format. So it was really nice in that regard.
In team specifically, you're always like playing for the matchup. So if you walk into a list where you're like, I don't know what it does, or I underestimate what it can do, like that's a bad place to be in a team format, because like the best thing you do in a team format is to tell you exactly in this matchup how many points I'm going to score. Like the closer you are to knowing the final outcome of the game, the better you are for your team, so they can know to pair you into it, or if they pair you into a bad matchup, at least know what you're going to score. If you come in there thinking I'm going to get max score, this is an easy win for me,
20-0, no problem,
and you walk out of there with a loss, or you get 20-0'd,
or you're the first guy's game.
You might
done
lose the whole
30
round
minutes.
for the whole team, right? Like,
you're walking around. Can I get you guys anything to drink? My game's done. So
you got hungry on your face. Get your whole team mad at you. Might have lost the whole round for your team. So like, you never want to like walk into that match. So if you can come up with a list that is kind of a little off the beaten path, gives you a little bit of advantage because of the unknown, but also potentially puts your pairings into a weird place where your opponent's making a mistake. That might be ultimately the round that wins you the whole match.
It was an interesting event to go and play Chaos Knights 4 times out of 5. And get 20 O's 4 times out of 5.
They chose him. They just had no idea that his is like the most kryptonite you can think of for Knights. It's unbelievable.
My games did not go past round 3. It was
I'm
bad.
like, what'd you get this round? He's like, knights again. I'm like, are you kidding me? He's like, yeah, they picked me. I'm like, I don't even understand these guys. Don't they know? No, they didn't know. And jeez, he only got knights like 3 or 4 times, right?
Yeah.
Out of the 6
Yeah,
games.
and it was the questions were, why do you get +1 to wound? Because I'm a salamander, and it's turn 2. Oh, okay. So why do you get +1 to wound? Because I'm a salamander, and it's turn 2.
It's just the same question.
But you win on 5s, no win on 4s. Wait, what? Why do you get? Oh, yeah. Like, yeah, it's gonna be every turn.
Yeah, it never ended. Even I would ask. I played them all the time. I'm like, why do you get to do that? Yeah, that's right. I was not immune to that stupid ass question of why do you get to do that? It's like salamanders.
Which, it was bad. It was bad rules writing because you don't want to create those scenarios and you don't want the game to be in the way of enjoyment of the game. The mechanics don't need to get in the way. And I felt like that edition, that for a long time, the mechanics got in the way of playing the game with the person because it was always stop. Before you do that, you need to know this. And that creates a bad situation. Because like you said, I don't want to tell you how to beat me, but man, I'm telling you right now, in about 10 minutes, you are not going to be my friend forever.
Yeah. I also don't want you to just like step on this trap that I've set for you like full force, like bleach your fall a little bit. It could be bad. I didn't have that with my army. My army was just like full rerolls. So like if you want to get dragons, just roll lots of 6s and get to reroll the ones that aren't 6s. You get more naturally. And so that's another way to just make your opponent upset. It's just like to make them feel like that's all you roll 6s. But
it was, man, just keep rolling dice. Just roll till you get whatever you
want.
roll
until I get all the results.
Like, let me know when you're done.
Trust me,
let me know when you're done.
I get to reroll this 3 times. It's fine.
And heaven forbid one of them's cocked, because then you get really mad. Like that made me irrationally
cocked one.
mad for no reason. It would be like one cocked dice, and I'd be like, "Yeah, of course you're going to reroll that one too." We're like,
"Boy, better. Are you sure that was not cocked?"
Well, upset people around here. I don't know. A lot of years of work I had to put into this.
But next episode, we're gonna, after this weekend, we're gonna put in a workshop. We're gonna see what works, what doesn't work. We'll report back, and we'll record again. So until next time, guys, we appreciate it. We look forward to you. Thanks for listening. See you next time.
See you next time.